Welcome, everyone, to the live podcast, Through the Leadership Lens, a podcast presented by the Women Propane Council. I am Freddie Riddler.
And I'm Bridget Kidd. And today we have four great guests. Awkwardly, I normally pause and forget my next line there. So thankfully, we didn't have to go through that today. But to kick this off, we had talked earlier about this experience in doing this podcast has been kind of crazy. When Jessica approached me at Southeast a few years ago about doing this, I thought, there is no way anyone's going to want to listen to us talk. I mean, no offense to me, well, you, but
okay.
No one wants to listen to me talk. But what has happened is in each of these conversations, we've had such a great opportunity to talk to, I mean, several of our guests are here, but just to get insight into somebody's experience and education and upbringing and you know, kind of all of the twists and turns that brought them where they are. And through that process, personally, it's caused some self-reflection on my own leadership journey and those gaps that I have, and there are plenty, and how do you fill those gaps and what are those next steps? So as we were talking, we were wondering, you know, what has your experience been, and did you have that same moment of self-reflection to say, here's where I am, but that's where I want to go? So Christina, I'm going to let you start.
So it was interesting reflecting back on when I had the opportunity to do the podcast, and at that point in time, I had just taken a new position on within our organization as our Chief Operating Officer. And when I say between now and then feels like a bit of an eternity, it does, right? And I think for myself, one thing that I've really reflected on, and I hit on it when we had spoken, was time management. Right? And trying to figure out how to make the best use of my time and finding that balance and thinking through, okay, how do I do more with really less? And being this guardian of the time has had to be really critical, and really lasering and focusing more on my delegation skills and working on them. That's something I've reflected on and tried to build on since the last time we all spoke together.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. And I would wonder with that delegation, I think as you grow into leadership positions, and we talk on the podcast a lot about your position on an org chart versus your role as a leader. And that delegation, there's a weird balance between wanting to demonstrate you can do the task and you wanting to build somebody up. So I think that's probably a pretty common theme that everybody, that's nice. Thank you.
Absolutely.
You want to pass it down?
Sure.
Unless somebody wants to jump in. We don't have to be that formal.
Reflecting, yes. I think that I'm one of those people that likes to retrospect almost everything. Are you like that? Like raise your hand if you send an email and then you reread it? I know. So yes, absolutely. And I think that talking about leadership, which is what our Patton talked about on the podcast, is that you remember experiences where maybe you weren't the best leader, and that how much you can learn from those experiences. And obviously talking about them where everyone is hearing, it's not always comfortable. So I always like to, at the end of the conversation, if I haven't been uncomfortable, then I probably haven't helped anyone learn or change. And I thought that the experience, you did a very good job of asking questions to get people to go to that place, you know, where they might not have done it exactly right, and maybe learned from that. So definitely that retrospective.
First of all, I agree with both of you there. And when I had the great opportunity to be part of the podcast, and the questions that I got asked really reflected on, well, a little bit of the school that I'm responsible for and that I've been responsible in charge of. You know, I took a lot of the leadership traits of my time in the military. I spent 30 years of active duty in the military and trained all over the world and deployed and stuff. But then, you know, coming into the school, and then after you know what I'm saying, the podcast, I then had to start thinking about, okay, what's the next step now? Now that I do see myself, where do I see myself in the future? And it's really helped me to kind of look, instead of looking more down and into my organization, it has now helped me to see more up and out, to see the bigger vision, to see the bigger picture, to get creative, to become adaptive, to do more for our industry, to do more for our students. and it's kind of, and it really helped me to kind of see myself and do that self-reflection also.
I would say that post podcast, I think you guys asked a lot of questions about my leadership journey, and I think at one point really pressed me to pinpoint and name people specifically who supported me on my journey, people that I looked up to, people who inspired me, and that really afterwards made me think about what am I doing to help develop leaders around me? How can I support people in our business? How can I coach people in their leadership? I have a great leadership coach. I've had lots of great people, as I said, over the years. So I've really focused on what I'm doing to support up-and-coming leaders, give people opportunities to lead, and develop them in their leadership.
So Lauren, I'm going to pick on you first, and you can all weigh in on this too. And I'm paraphrasing this, of course, but in our podcast, you said, leadership is not a role, it's not a title, it's not a job, it's not a position. Leadership is what you do and how you act. How do you foster that inspiration and pass on to others? So when I watch that, I want to know, like, when you say those things, how do you pass on that we all are leaders? It's just you have to pull it out.
So I think that in our business with our leadership team, I try really hard to encourage people to share what their experience is, how they feel about whether it's something tough that we're trying to decide or something more mundane, that making sure everybody has the opportunity to speak their mind, feel heard. I routinely try to encourage and thank people when they disagree with me. Publicly in group discussions, because I think it's important for people to feel like they can say, well, Lauren, that's a great idea, but actually it's not a great idea, I disagree with you, because that's how we make the best decisions as a team. And I think another part of that is just the energy that you bring to everything you do, and trying to bring positive energy to what I'm doing, so that I think energy is incredibly contagious, and encouraging our leaders to bring that energy, but also to encourage the people who report to them and remind them that, again, leadership isn't a title. Everyone has an opportunity to lead. We're doing some book club internally that we call Read to Lead, and it's open to everybody and just gives people opportunities to read leadership books together and talk about what that means and how they can lead in their individual roles.
That is, jump in, sorry, John, real quick. In Tamria, when we had our conversation, one of the things, back to this org chart versus participation, you hit on a phrase that you say is, I'm just brainstorming. Because I think in certain roles, the team you might be brainstorming with is like, well, you have to make the decision, so I'm just going to do whatever you said, right? But really, you want to encourage this conversation and this dialogue. I would imagine everybody's in that boat. Are there tips for, on the other side, maybe there's people in the audience who are the employee or the team member that isn't the person that's making the decision. How do you know that balance of, is this your decision, or are we really brainstorming here?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that there's a term that's called framing. And so when we spoke, I said my framing sentence is, don't take me literally. So the table of feral gas right there is shaking their head. So because as a leader, you want to be able to brainstorm with your team. Like, recommendations are great, but sometimes you just want to roll up your sleeves and you want to get in there, and you really want to also be a part of the idea generation. So if you have a framing either sentence or a framing question, something to frame out, okay, don't take me literally, this is just an idea, but let's talk about this. It's not the idea. Don't go do this. That's not the idea. It's one of the ideas that I want to rumble about or to talk through. And I think it's really important to sort of set those boundaries, and then that way. The other thing is, in planning sessions, we include, all levels of the organization, just as Lauren, and so saying we're checking our titles at the door, right? We're checking the role that we play in the company at the door, and everyone's sitting here with exactly the same viewpoint. And then if you're looking for a logistical tip, is that if you use Post-it notes instead of verbal shares, everyone's Post-it note has the same weight. You put them up and then you read them all at the same time, versus the loudest person in the room, or maybe the quiet person that has the great idea but doesn't feel comfortable sharing it. So that's a little logistical item.
I like your framing, framing the, the problem or whatever that, I'm saying that you're trying to do. Because, I think it's very important that you get buy-in immediately from your subordinates. And if you bring them into the fold immediately whenever you have a great idea or you want to, you want a movement or you want to take things a different direction, and when you involve, your subordinates you get that buy-in from them immediately, and they want to see that come to fruition, and you empower them to do those things. Because what I want commitment out of my people. I don't want compliance. Compliance is me telling you to do something and you do exactly what to do and how to do it because that's exactly what I told you to do. But if you see the bigger vision and if you involve your subordinates right from the get-go, as soon as you have that first meeting, then you get that buy-in and then you get the commitment versus the compliance.
What do you do if you don't get that buy-in?
Then you just beat them. No, that's a great question.
With your military background, it's always interesting to hear like your mindset from the military to now.
Yeah.
Without beating them though.
Right. In the military, the more rank you get looked at this like figure, and then of course most of it does become, when you put out orders and things to do, it does. We got to do it because his title says he's empowered to tell us what to do there. But again, it just goes back to that empowerment and then also the commitment that you want from your team. But one of my biggest challenges though coming out of the military was in the civilian sector, how do I influence, especially in my organization, my internal organization to my school, that people that have been working in this industry far, far, far longer than I have, and then how do I use my leadership abilities to influence them? And right from the get-go, I had to, kind of humble myself and say, I'm like a fish out of water right now, okay? And then I got to learn all this stuff and just staying right in their right hip pocket at all times, being there and helping influence not only them but also the students that we bring, and then just caring and showing that you care about each and every one of them.
I'll also like to add that when you're having those brainstorming sessions too, creating this environment where people feel very comfortable expressing their opinion. And I think it's critical that in these situations, you're making sure that not only opinions matter, but you're asking folks to really step up and go against whatever the status quo may be. So oftentimes, I really encourage our team to, as much as I want them to, have alignment with what we're doing, I want to hear the reasons why we shouldn't do something, right? I want them to push back. I want them to critique, because that really then creates and fosters this environment where now we've really criticized a way that direction we're going in. Let's make sure we are showing those voices, people are being heard, and then we can truly understand the direction we want to move in.
Well, I think there's an element of that when we talk about this on each podcast. I think we have several guests in the room about the risk associated with that, right? Either as an employee or as a leader. There's a lot of risk involved in leadership, and there's a lot of risk in taking those steps to become a leader. And one of the things that I just hear from everyone is your leaders generally are sincerely trying to draw this out. And is there any advice you would give for those people on the other side to believe it, right? To really believe that taking those risks is worth it?
I'll jump in first. I think the organization first has to showcase to the employee that they are in that safe environment, right? And you need to make sure that what you're heard and what you're saying is put out there. But I would say on the other end, as an employee or as a part of these groups, don't be afraid to step out there. Don't be afraid to, again, voice your perspective. That's why you're there. You're with an organization because they've chosen you, because you're adding value to that group. Just take the risk. Put yourself in what I like to call uncomfortable environments, because that's where you end up growing.
I mean, all of that's, it sounds so good, right? But then you have to do it.
Yes.
And I think I shared in my podcast, as a young, mother, family, the livelihood of our family sort of fell on my shoulders a little bit there. And I don't know, I didn't feel like I could put my job at risk like that. And that was really hard, but I knew I needed to practice somewhere. So I volunteered in my community, and then I kind of practiced the going against the status quo. Like, we're not going to put the napkins for the football game over there. It's easier to do it over here. Like, it's simple, right? But it's still, you have to voice your opinion. So I don't know, getting involved with your community, finding ways to practice speaking, to get comfortable sharing ideas, to be a leader that maybe doesn't put your livelihood in the midst of all of it. I'd say do that first, right? And then you practice, and then you get confident, and then people around you tell you that was a great idea, and that bolsters you for when you do it at work. Mm-hmm. And then I think, Christina, I'm not sure we can capitalize any more on what you said. I think you said it perfectly.
So I'm going to shift a little bit because I'm looking at John here. As one of the kind of themes in your podcast and in your story that several of us have heard is you took some major shifts in going from high school to the military to this school in North Carolina that everybody knew was going to be incredibly successful, but that's a big risk. So as you're looking out and, you know, some of these students who come on board, would you talk about how you evaluated those decisions and then embraced that change? Because those were major changes in trajectory of potentially your life and career, for sure.
Sure, yes. Well, I mean, like, I really feel that change is necessary when people hit rock bottom. Okay, and so there I was right before I joined the military. I didn't know I was wanting to join the military. And I just wrecked my car. I just graduated high school, just wrecked my car, and I was driving my mom's Chrysler LeBaron. And I wanted to burn my last $10 that I had, so I thought that it would be great that I'd just borrow her car, go down to the mall, and buy me a shirt to make myself feel good. And so I got stuck behind some traffic. A lot of self-reflection, and how I joined the military was I looked to the left, and there was the recruiting stations. And the only open parking spot was right in front of the Army recruiting station. And I kid you not. I shared that with everybody. And then so I walked in, I said, I need change. You know, I was down. All of my friends went off to college, community college, those kind of things. I really didn't think too much about it because I was more into sports, and I already had a job. But of course, I was a train wreck. Wrecked my car and those things. So that's how I joined the military, and I would not change anything at all. To make that decision. And so when I retired, I took on, I became a professional contract trainer for United States Army soldiers in digital operating systems that they use on the battlefield and so on and so forth. And so when John contacted me about this position here, quickly did I learn through a couple of different iterations that he was more interested in my leadership abilities than I was knowing anything and everything about propane. And I specifically remember one of the questions, like his very, very first question he asked me, he says, "What do you know about propane?" So I thought, well, John, I've got a Weber grill outside, and when it runs out, I just take my cylinder down to the nearest 7-Eleven and I exchange it out. He goes, "Great, because I don't need for you to know anything about propane." And I was like, well, why are you hiring me then? Or why are you, interviewing with me? But I quickly learned that based on my, military leadership experience and what I had done in the military, my experiences, and then also trying to draw military folks into this, into our industry is key, and it's very important. And that has really helped me to relate to the soldiers and military members that are transitioning, because Lord knows I'll probably give, in 30 days, I'll give probably 10 or 15 different tours of my school, and a lot of them, because of Fort Liberty being just, skip, hop, and jump away from where we're at, we get a lot of soldiers that come up there that are right on the brink of, retiring. And then when I bring them into my office and they look at some of my awards and decorations and stuff like that, they question it. So how did you get into this organization, and why are you doing it? And I tell them that, the industry's growing. Just like all industries, but this one, I really feel that it's very special. And when we talk about all the different jobs and opportunities and how I, as a senior leader, took that leap of faith to come into the school and to learn our curriculum and to help drive our curriculum, then that we get their buy-in in it. That's yet another way of the power of influence of a former leader that served in the ranks with them as well.
And that's interesting. The only constant thing in life is change. And you kind of just went through your whole life story of making these changes and changes and changes. In our podcast, we always talk about how has leadership changed. In fact, it's on one of the questions on the sheets, I believe. Since you kind of went through how your life changed and how your leadership roles changed, I know we all talked about it on the podcast, but since your podcast, have you made any changes? Going back and looking at the podcast and that question coming up, does it make you think outside the box of how do we have to keep changing the way we lead our company or our team?
In fact, Freddie, one of the phrases that I hate the most is, well, we do it this way because we've always done it this way, And one of the first things that I always do is I always ask to see their cell phone. Do you have a cell phone? Who doesn't have a cell phone these days, So I'm like, let me see your cell phone. So the first phone that you ever purchased.
Wait, they give you their cell phone? Wait, when is this happening?
No, I just want to see their cell phone.
Oh, okay.
I know. I don't know where this is going, but I'm interested.
No.
For their code?
No, well, when we talk about change,
He might search their phones. I
Cheapers,
like it.
where's my phone?
I like it.
I want to see the
Pork and
style.
Pools,
I
watch
want to
out.
see the style of phone that they have. And I always ask them, was that the first phone that you ever purchased? No, what was it? A bag phone, right? You had to, plug it into the cigarette lighter. And I'm like, then after that, what came? And then the big brick, that came out. And then after that was the Razor, the flip phone and stuff. And then finally, then this mysterious thing came out where I could actually search through the internet. I'm saying on my phone. So what you're meaning to tell me about the adaptation and change is that you don't want to change and you don't want to do something different, but yet you change your phone several different times to keep up with what's going on today. So why is it so hard to change? And if we don't change, and I'll tell you what, and our curriculum has changed and adapted, and of course we know now with the new propane education program and how that's influencing, my organization and what we teach there, we also have to change and adapt. And that's one thing that I'm very proud of my instructors, that they've already dove into that program and already starting to figure out how we can stay relevant and continue doing that. But with so much demands of what we do in this, especially in this industry, we also have to continue. I know that as a school, as an education school for our industry, we have to continuously change and evolve, and that's what I really push with my instructors and getting their feedback and buy-in. From the start of it.
Well, speaking about change, let's hear from somebody else. I'm kidding.
So change, I guess one of the things that I spoke about in my podcast was just leadership, like what kind of components need to be there for leadership. And afterwards, I really was thinking about how I viewed that. And I'm a stats person. I love data. So everyone raise their hand up. Just one hand, raise it up. Okay. So if you've ever been part of a team that hasn't been quite that high performing, maybe a lower performing team, put your hand down. Okay, if you've ever been a part of a team where maybe there wasn't that much trust, put your hand down. If you've ever been part of a team where there wasn't a clear vision, put your hand down. So statistically, there's no perfect environment for leadership, right? No one still has their hand up. And I feel like leadership, you have to have that clear vision, which John talked about, right? There needs to be trust, which is what Lauren spoke about. And you really need to have teamwork, which is what Christina is speaking about, and myself, everyone here. And those things don't always go right. And I think when we were speaking, Bridget, and I was thinking that my job was to try to create this perfect environment where there is the clear vision, there's teamwork, and there's trust, but everyone has their own perspective, and they bring that perspective, and it's not always the perfect environment. And to me, the podcast was sort of like I have to stop thinking about trying to make the perfect environment and just try to figure out how can I engage people, or how can I make it as best as I can, and then bring people in to try to make it better. And that was a good, I think, retrospective from when we spoke.
Well, it's very interesting that you bring that up, because that was my follow-up for our specific conversation is, how do you feel when one of those is off? When one of those three things that is so important for your leadership experience is a little bit off balance, what do you then do? Because your role in this is equally as important, right? What's your experience as the leader? And if that's kind of what you need, that's legitimate too. So how do you right that ship or balance those three pillars back out?
Yeah, that's a really great question. That would probably be like a whole other podcast. So all I'm going to say is that I internalize everything. And so the first thing I do is think, why didn't I create a clear vision? Why didn't I make a trustworthy? And again, it's all about the perception of the people you bring together. So I'll just go for clear vision is I have been a part of teams where I didn't exactly know where I was going or what success looked like, and I didn't understand how to ask the question. And one of the things I learned now is, for some people you have to say, for instance, when I took on the COO role and working with Jim Farrell, I would say, what does success look like in 3 months? And get him to verbalize what that was. What does success look like in a year? And if you do that with everyone on the team, you immediately begin to see, oh, wow, that's what you think we can do in 3 months? No way, Or, oh, yeah, I could totally get that done in 3 months. So time-bounding things and asking clarifying questions can help with the vision side of things.
I think if you have some of the culture stuff that you talked about internally, Tamria, with framing, setting clear expectations, visioning in general, having alignment with your team, nurturing leaders in your team, that when things do feel a bit off balance, it's easier to go like, okay, what's going on? And people know they can come out and say, well, we're not aligned because I don't agree with this, or I'm having a hard time with this, or, I got something going on at home that's really distracting me from being a good functioning piece of this team. And that if you have that culture and you work hard at it when things are bumpy and not great, it's easier to get back into a cohesive team alignment.
Just to also touch on the communication piece as well. Everyone talks about communication, but what does that really mean, right? And I think for me, what I've learned since the podcast, I always thought I was a strong communicator. I'm direct, I get right to the point for those that know me, but learning that sometimes the message that I was putting out, whether it was what we were looking to achieve or strategic vision, you need to make sure you are continuously repeating that. And whatever it is, if you have, so for us, we have 3 strategic pillars for this year, right? And every time we do a town hall meeting, every time I get my leadership team together, I am going through those 3 strategic pillars, and enough that now they can regurgitate it, they can put it out there that they're doing it with their team. We're putting it in our emails, any communication. It's critical because it needs to come, whatever you're looking to achieve, you just got to make sure it stays front and center. And if you think you're communicating it enough, and this is again what I learned, you're maybe not doing the best job. And what are those different modes? So I know that might seem really minor, but that was a big lesson for me of like, why is this not resonating? This is so clear to me, but they're just not getting it. And then understanding where that disconnect is, because again, you want that, whether it's your vision or what you're looking to achieve, you don't just want it to live and breathe with your leadership team. You want your frontline employees, your customer service, everybody rowing in the same direction. And for that to filter down, it's just gotta be repetitive and you gotta hit it hard.
Anyone, 1 second.
Freddie,
No,
permission to speak?
1 second. It's that clock I'm looking at. It's driving me crazy. No, any leaders, listen, because you'll hear something that they all say is teamwork. Like all the podcasts we do, them sitting up here, it's always about building this foundation with your entire organization. And that's so important. I'd love to hear that because you guys should be proud to be sponsors of your businesses, the way you talk about them and how you care about your staff. So I just want to call that out. Go ahead, John. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
One key aspect, and I want to touch on what Christine just talked about communication. One key aspect that, we always have to consider, we do think about leaders and leadership, but we also have to think about the led also. Who are we leading and how do they have influence also in our organization as well? And Christine, you said it best, communication, right? So we can communicate all we want to all day long, your strategic 3 pillars there, what the vision is, what the mission is, but if the communication, if it only goes down, okay, and we don't get that bottom-up refinement, so then they clearly understand what that vision is, then we're not going to be able to be productive. So just as important as being a good leader and being an effective communicator, it's just as effective also that we need to understand what the led understand about our vision and our communication by bottom-up refinement.
Well, just thinking about something as a takeaway, what are ways that you do that? Maybe everybody. How do you get that feedback or temperature check or whatever, satisfaction, however you want to phrase it? How do you get that from your team?
So while Christina was talking, one of the things that I was thinking about communication is that I think pretty early in my leadership, I realized that I needed to be quiet. People who know me know that I talk a lot, I talk fast, I can talk all day long about all kinds of subjects that I'm very passionate about, but being quiet so that I could hear and listen and really start to pay more attention to the body language of the people in the room, pay attention to the people who aren't talking, aren't saying anything, and trying to draw out what it is that they're thinking or is going on for them. And then the other part of that is trying to have as much connection with people as possible. So if I try to connect with the people who report to me and they're trying to make sure they have regular cadence of connection with the people who report to them and just continue that throughout the organization, then there's a better sort of beat on what is actually going on. And it's one of the things when I meet with my leaders, I ask what's the vibe of your team right now? What's the energy? What's the morale? Is there stuff going on that we need to address before it gets out of hand?
I think we also have to just be realistic that as leaders, people might not tell us things, right? And just realize that they're not going to tell us. So that's when empowering all of the managers within the organization to carry the message, to listen, to do as Lauren described, that maybe that's the only way that the information is going to kind of come back to you is through chain of command or because there's a safety meeting and people start talking in a group, but we're not going to hear everything. So other ways for that information to be caught and then acted on.
I think another piece of it is, I do want to just touch on what Lauren said. Silence is so powerful. Just silence can be so powerful in a meeting when someone in your team or part of your group is looking at you to weigh in, to give your opinion, and you just kind of draw back, right? And then that's where I feel with these conversations, the magic happens, right? And you are starting to see your team come to the table with these ideas. The other piece I wanted to mention on feedback is no matter what level you are within an organization, it is incredibly important that you stay close to your front line. So I spend a lot of time in the field. Sometimes it's scheduled, sometimes it's not scheduled, and then I just show up, right? And often it's, oh, Christina, we didn't know you were coming. Well, you didn't need to know I was coming, right? And part of it is you're out there, you're walking, you're talking to your service technicians, you're talking to your yard personnel, and you will really get the scoop of what's going on. And again, back to where the magic happens, there are so many great ideas that are just sitting out there with your customer service reps, with your yard personnel, and then if you take that little nugget, right, of information, and then you execute on it, not you, but your team, that is where you're now creating this environment of feedback, because I think the concern sometimes we see is maybe people do share, but they feel like they're not listened to, and they feel like if they do, it's a complaint or it's a suggestion, but nothing happens with what they're sharing. And if you and your leadership team can take it and now turn it into something that actually moves the needle, and even if it's minor, that now creates this culture and this environment of people being more in tune to your culture and more action-oriented.
In the podcast, there's a lot of quotes that we hear, a ton. I think every single podcast I hear 2 or 3 quotes. What you just described is a question I was going to ask you. One of your quotes that I absolutely love, you said, "Don't be a king, be a kingmaker." And what you just talked about now is that little bit of nugget that we put into place by bringing everybody else up. That's a great quote. And if anyone else has really any great quotes to share, I love them because not down here. But yeah, I mean, so the don't be a king. So do you want to just talk a little bit more about that? Don't be a king, be a kingmaker.
Sure. So I can't say I am the one that has coined that by any stretch of the imagination, but was taught that really by one of my significant mentors, my father, right? It is, how do you continue to build up your team? You don't want to be the person that is making all the decisions. You want to make sure that you are listening, you're getting feedback, and you're empowering your team, your leadership group to make mistakes, to make decisions. So it's critical. And how do I continue to make sure that I'm giving them that opportunity, right? And since the podcast, for me, when I think of that quote, I then think of now, how do we continue to get our leadership team, who is managing leaders, to take that mentality too, where, for example, they don't need to be on every call in which their team is making a decision. Let them have the autonomy to make their decisions, make their mistakes, and that's how we allow everybody to grow through that process.
Does anybody else? I think we see it. I mean, I see it with our team, especially with younger people joining, or people who have not been in the industry. I've only been in here for 12 years. So compared to a lot of people, that is like a blip on the radar. But there's something very cool, and maybe it's because I have young children, to see somebody kind of grow into this space and to grow into their own version of the role. And how do you recognize that and encourage that, so that, because those people that's a big deal. It's a big deal to step out of maybe what someone told you to do and you do just a little bit more, and then that recognition comes in. So anything that works well for you guys, or that you would be willing to share?
I think if you can spot curious people who care, then that is the foundation for them taking on whatever is the role that you give them. But I always challenge everybody to be curious about something, whatever it is. Be curious about it and care. And then if you can spot that, that to me is the pipeline for whatever are the next roles. And that's like the military is all about finding stars in the troop. So you have.
That's exactly right, and that's exactly what I was getting ready to say, is that you have to exploit them. You have to exploit their strengths, but meanwhile, leaders, we have to also help build their the ability to be able to step up, to be able to step out of the norm, and to be able to build that leader also as well. When we talk about everything that we've talked about so far, the key word here, that we keep all bouncing around, and it's been actually brought up a couple of times, it's just empowerment. Empower your subordinates, give them task and purpose. This is what we've got to do, and this is the reason why, because everybody wants to know the reason why we're doing things, right? Yes. And so we answer the why, and then let them run with it. Hey, I'm empowering you. I don't want you to do it my way, because my way may not be as effective as perhaps your way. You've got the experience here, and I believe in you. Go out there, make those mistakes, learn from those mistakes, and then just continue to grow and evolve into a leader, and let's accomplish this mission together.
I do think I'm sitting here thinking, and probably says more about me than anything else, is when we talk about leadership, it's often like rainbows and butterflies and like, oh, it's so great, and we build these people up and they're so wonderful. And it's so great, and we accomplished everything we wanted to do, and we're all victorious. But what about when it's not so great? And when the team isn't really working and you're not achieving the goal? What do you do in the roles that you're in to kind of rally the troops back up and say, maybe I did make a mistake, maybe I was not the leader I wanted to be, but man, we still have to achieve that goal. So what do you do? That came out of nowhere, sorry guys. We were all so happy and it was going so well.
They're still thinking of rainbows and butterflies.
That kind of goes back to, because I believe it was, I don't remember who, Bridget or Freddie, you guys asked me, but I remember you guys asked me that same question, and I remember my response to it. I always say that it's easy being a leader when all the conditions are perfect. When I've had a full night's rest, when I got a full night, I got a full belly, when it's 80 degrees outside and it's perfect low humidity and we've got nice puffy clouds and everything is going great. It's great. It's awesome. We can be a good leader then, but I think it takes trials. It takes falters, it takes failures, it takes falling flat down on your face, and then perhaps if you don't have the right type of chemistry and you're racking your brains out in your organization, like how can I help, these individuals here? That's when I truly believe that true leadership is then personified. When the times are tough, am I just going to fold in and I'm going to compartmentalize this problem into this box and tape it up and then put it over here in the corner because I know what it's going to do. It's going to manifest in that box. And then by the time it blows up in my face, then it's going to be worse than ever. So I think, again, it's easy being a leader when all the conditions are perfect, but when there comes times of trial, times of change to move forward, that's when true leadership is then, identified and personified.
I think you also have to be honest with yourself. That's like the first thing, right? So if something is, it's all, okay, it's great to talk about how easy this is and rainbows and butterflies, right? But it doesn't always work. So I think, you got to reflect and talk to yourself and say, this is not working, right? And is it me? Is it the situation? And try to determine and then self-reflect as a leader, right? It's, if anyone's ever read the book, Extreme Ownership, it's unbelievable. And, you have to live and die by your decisions and really what you've done as a leader. And then I think you have to be really transparent with your team. And it's having a conversation. This is not working. And, facing the fact. And then let's get in a room. Let's figure out what is and what's not working and starting to shift. But I think it can be a very easy situation to say, all right, well, wait a second, let's just give it a little bit more time, right? And, time can be a source of evil. Sometimes you have to figure out there's a problem, you have to make a very quick decision, and then you got to nip it in the butt because it's not going to get better unless you turn it around.
I think one of the best pieces of advice I ever was given was when you're a leader and you're in a situation where there's failure, this was from my baseball coach, so turn your ball cap around and be the follower and immerse yourself in the followership and understand what is it like to be in that position, but not as the leader, and really 360 what's going on, and ask yourself the hard questions that you may not ask yourself when you're thinking with your leadership hat on, but when you're the team and you're looking and you really want to know. I think, admitting that there's failure, putting the followership role on, and really being honest with the questions that you would ask the leader or tell the leader, which in this case, right, is yourself, is a really good practice to go on. And that was all about not being able to play third base, and that I really just needed to be a catcher because I didn't have the arm to throw to first. And I realized that when I turned my hat around that I was never going to play third base. So all worked out in the end. I was a catcher.
I just wanted to add to what Christina said about sometimes you do have to be able to make decisions quickly and get down to things. And the other side of that is I try to sort of take mental note of, is this urgent? Is this an emergency? Or do I need to pause and just take a deep breath, brainstorm, think this through, maybe have some individual conversations to kind of get a beat and make sure that everybody is sharing in the group what's going on and get to the bottom of it.
I think it's time.
It is. So are you guys all familiar with our WIP round? They're not as easy as they were before, but they're intended to be fun. You just got voted first, so
I guess
best
I did.
of luck.
Hold on. Bridget, just wait.
Oh, wait, I forgot. Instructions are not great for me.
I got it. I'm unremarkable.
You have a minute. I know. I like that you're ready to go.
I'm ready.
She's ready to either leave or we're doing it. Do you want to intro this?
No, I think they just got a video to play.
Oh, we're doing it. Okay. Hold on. Sorry.
Do I do anything?
You don't have to do anything.
Okay, thank God.
Yeah.
Just breathe.
Well, just take a deep breath because nothing is live. So
don't worry, none of this is aired.
hello and welcome to another episode of Through the Leadership Lens, a podcast presented by the Women Propane Council. I am Freddie Riddler.
And I'm Bridget Kidd.
And I'm Colin Swearis.
Try turning off the one in your front. That looks more normal.
Better. Should I?
You look normal now. Are you ready, Bridget?
Yeah, heck yeah. Hold on.
Okie dokie.
My things sorted here. I'm sure we did this. I forget who we were interviewing, Aaron. I can't. The halo effect can be a bit much.
Do you guys have a quick second? I just realized that My dogs have invited themselves down. I'm gonna go put them in their cages so we don't have any barking. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Whenever you're ready, go ahead.
And I'm going to re-ask the question, Leslie.
Okay.
And then talk about Cub Scouts.
All right.
Let's do it.
Ready when
All
you're
right.
ready.
Perfect. I think everything's good to
Ryan,
go.
I'm going to tell you this because I'm just used to work. I don't know if you know Tucker well enough, but I do. You may want to do this to your hair because he just hit it when you, there you go. Yeah, I'm going to introduce you, Todd.
All right, I'm gonna make sure I don't call this the wrong. I saw a funny story real quick. I was doing podcast or seminar, and 3 times I said, "Hello and welcome to another Through the Leadership Lens." And then Kyle looks at me. I'm like, "I'm sorry, wrong podcast." So I'll try to get this one right.
Hi, this is Penny Spinazzola. Happy New Year.
Yeah. So the whip round is something fun because you really get to know who the person is by their comments. Typically, we don't give them the questions we ask. Well, we did right away, but then we just kept adding new ones, and they'd be like, "This wasn't on my, email I got beforehand." So they don't know these questions either. Bridget found them, so if you want to start it off, go for it.
All right, we'll go in easy. What is your go-to karaoke song, and do you have a dance move that goes with it?
And you have to demonstrate too.
I'm not dancing. Okay? But I would say it is Creedence Clearwater Revival. What song am I thinking of? Oh, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, my goodness.
The moon?
No. Oh, my goodness. I heard it through the grapevine.
Oh.
There we go. That is my karaoke song. There may be some dance moves to it, but you'll have to wait to see that.
To see. All right, everybody's got to answer. Sing
I
once.
don't have a karaoke song, but right now the blasted in the car, sing it with everybody's song is Beyonce Texas Hold'em. We pretty much rage it on the way to school every morning. So.
I think mine would be I love to sing the song Sugar. Yes, by Maroon 5, yes.
Could you sing a little bit of it so if they don't know what it is?
No.
I have a terrible singing voice, but I love to sing. So all 3 of my children have been serenaded just constantly. Not anymore since they're all grown, but I like Brown Eyed Girl. That was probably my favorite one.
I mean, I was kind of hoping someone had mine, which is Ain't Too Proud to Beg, which is a great one. It's a fan favorite if you're out karaokeing tonight. They'll bring the house down.
Yeah, I don't have, this isn't really a dancing song, but mine's Piano Man, for sure. If you could have dinner with any historical figure, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
I love this question. Sometimes I ask it like, if you were in a museum and you could choose to go back in time to any time, what would it be? And I honestly, I would want to go back to the beginning of the calendar. I'd like to go back to year 33 and sit through one of the sermons that Jesus gave. I really would. I would do that in a heartbeat.
I was just getting ready to say Jesus Christ.
This is a tough one. But I love American history, right? So what's popping into my head right now is the early days of American history, sitting there with Abe Lincoln and understanding what he was facing and what was happening with the country at that point in time.
I'm torn on that one, but I think I'm going to go Martin Luther King Jr.
All good choices. Okay, that's me. Sorry. What is the most spontaneous thing or adventurous thing you've ever done on a whim?
Am I first?
Anyone can go.
So I'm a huge skier, so I don't know if this is that much on a limb, but I was out in Whistler skiing. This is quite a while ago, and someone asked if I wanted to go heli-skiing. So there was an immediate yes, and any sort of extreme skiing is my thing. So that was probably the most spontaneous and extreme thing I've ever done, and don't know if I would do it again 20 years later, but if someone wants to go out west and ski the back bowls, I'm your girl.
Climbing in Yosemite, and someone said, "Do you want to sleep on the wall?" Normally we go up and come back down, and I have an extra cot. So slept on the wall overnight rock climbing, and I was terrified. My eyes never closed. But I did it. Never did it again, but I did it.
I am not a spontaneous, adventurous. I'm a very planned, calculated human. So I feel inspired to do something adventurous and spontaneous.
I'm with you, sister, because I'm a planner. I'm a very detailed, down to the minute details. But I think if I had to do something spontaneous when I lived in Italy, I ate so many different varieties of seafood and raw seafood, and I was, the first time I feel like I was spontaneous, I just picked up octopus, freshly killed, and I ate it.
It's not for the faint of heart there, my friend.
Well, hey, this transitions really nicely. We'll start with you, John. What's the weirdest food combination you enjoy that others might find strange?
We cook a lot in our house, so oftentimes I just take leftover. My wife will look at me when I'm making my lunch for the day, and I'll take leftovers and just pile them up in a big bowl. And then she said, "What are you going to do with that?" I'm like, "Just throw hot sauce on it, and it'll be good for everything,
We call those commercials in the Midwest.
I'm trying to get my words together here. I don't think there's a combination that I can really speak to, but I am the person that when I go out for dinner and I look at the menu, whatever is the oddest, strangest thing that may be on that menu is what I am getting. And my husband's the opposite. He's like a hamburger, steak kind of guy. So it's always interesting when that takes place, but there's been a plethora of very unique foods that I've eaten in my lifetime.
I'm trying to think of something weird that I've eaten. I really enjoy to eat mint chocolate chip ice cream and strawberry ice cream simultaneously, which I think is really weird. I love ice cream, and those would be it's a weird combo.
Yeah, I'm a really picky eater, so nothing strange. Sorry. Nope.
You've got to adopt in your house like
Yeah.
we do in ours, the Parent Trap Oreos and peanut butter. My kids love it now. It's disgusting. It's completely disgusting. All right, well, thank you. You successfully went through that round.
Wow, those
I
were
think
really
we're going to
That
open
was
up.
it, right?
We're going to open up for some Q&A now.
We are,
in the
yep.
Audience, if anyone has any questions for the guests, now's your chance.
My question is, and I think everyone knows in this room, it's not easy to be a leader, particularly to your question what if it's not gelling? What if things, and it can be exhausting, mentally exhausting. Where do you go when you're having a mentally exhausting time?
My family is my energizer and the balm for my soul. I will just go find a child or a mom or a dad or a brother or sister and just ask for a hug and try to get energy from them just quietly, and it always works 100% of the time.
I think for me, I have to get myself out of the situation, right? And I need to do something that is taking up my mental space. So whether that is, working out, or I just started playing chess with my son. And for some reason, that's like my safe zone now. We're trying to get my daughter involved too. My son is 6 and he's beat me a couple times, but I think I have to work on my skills. But for some reason, when you're mentally in another space, that's really helped me. And then I can go back and look at things a little bit clearer.
A couple things, listening to music, driving, just getting space. My house is never quiet or calm or lacking chaos. So if I have chaos in my head, I really need to remove myself from that. Loud music works. Playing with kids, hugs are great. So those are my go-tos.
I think key for me is just taking a step back, thinking about what I want to be able to accomplish. Was I effective at communicating? And then what I go back to is important key of communication is that bottom-up refinement. If there's misunderstanding, if we're in the midst of chaos, then what am I doing as a leader, and how am I influencing my organization, and how are they perceiving me as well? And it's important for me to hear it from them as well.
I feel like I can admit this to this group, but I love leadership books. And so that's my question to you. What's your favorite leadership book?
One of my favorite leadership books is Chasing Excellence. It's while the setting is the making of a CrossFit champion, each and every one of the chapters really, if you're smart enough, which everyone in this room I know is smart enough to understand what the real message is there, while this female CrossFit athlete is going through all the different many challenges to become nominated as the CrossFit champion there, but all of the setbacks, shortcomings, and embracing failure, and then what it takes, to get on, to get up to that elite level there. All of the underlining chapters and what they mean in that book, Chasing Excellence, really has helped me, and I adopt some of those as well.
I'm an avid reader. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team is so good. So if anyone hasn't read it or had their team read it, it's a home run.
I agree with Christina. I like that book. Actually, I just reread it. That's a really good one. We'll go with that.
Leadership and Self-Deception. Sometimes feels like a little bit of a tough read, but I've read it 3 or 4 times. It talks a lot about understanding what you bring to the table in any situation. I think it's great for leaders, it's great for families, just understanding and reminding yourself that you cannot change other people. You can change yourself, you can change how you react to situations, you can change how you approach something, and that really, that's where you have to go back and focus as to how can I do this differently if I want to impact the situation differently.
I kind of want to circle back to the ideas coming from employees. Sometimes I feel like employees might have a hard time saying their idea or bringing it up because they hear over and over again, oh, we've been down that alley, it can't be done, it can't be done. So how do you suggest to the employee to keep bringing up that conversation, because maybe they have found an avenue but no one's listening to them, but how do they respectfully bring it up to their leader?
So if you've given what you think is a great idea multiple times and it's fallen on deaf ears, I'm an action-oriented person. So you're empowered to do your idea on the scope of your job, your team, your department. And so sometimes you have to show people what the idea looks like, because they may not understand it, how you're explaining it verbally, or what the outcome or results might be. So I always say action, right? So do something action-oriented to display what it is that you're trying to get across as the point.
I think it's important to remember that not all organizations have leadership that are willing and accepting of other people's ideas, change. Some people are kind of, this is my way and this is how we're doing it. And so I think that it's important to remember that there are companies, there are organizations, there are places where people really value the people who work there and parts of their team, and to find that fit.
I think to me it's setting the culture, setting the conditions where subordinates can effectively communicate, with their leaders. You've got guidance, you put out guidance, you got goals, you got missions, whatever, and then allow their creativity to come up with those ways, and be receptive to listening to them and those ideas. And if they do have those ideas, and because here's the reality behind this too, is like there's a time and a place where you have to be directive because we don't have time, we're in a time crunch, and it's got to get done now. But then if you properly plan and then you give them that opportunity to freely think, and then get that communication back to you, you're setting the conditions for a good workplace environment.
I think you also need to think about how you're framing the question, right? So back to the action-oriented, are you making a suggestion, or are you also putting forward, okay, this is why we need to take action. This is what the real problem is, and this is the impact that this issue has on the organization. So sometimes not only making the suggestion, but showcasing how if you don't take action, this is what would happen to the organization. And then even if you don't have, let's say, a solution, thinking through what resources you need and how you would get to that solution, perhaps even a more robust explanation may be beneficial too.
Hi, good afternoon. I just want to go back to something Christina said at the beginning, but I would love to hear from everybody. When you talk about ambassador of time management, I think that's something that we, as an industry, struggle with in a lot of our different companies. We're always trying to do more with less, and that includes with people, more with less people, more oversight, more area, more territory. And a lot of people get burned out, and they lose work-life balance, and it affects them personally. And so it's very easy and quick to say it's the job that's burning me out, and I think a lot of times it's poor time management, and it's people that are trying to do too much and they're not focusing on time management. So for someone that is trying to turn that tide, to get out of burnout, to be better and an ambassador of time management, what would you recommend of where they should start to learn how to do that and to flex that skill?
I'll start. So someone recently said to me, you need to look at your days in increments of 8, okay? 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of work, and 8 hours of you time, right? Now, how realistic that is for all of us and I said, oh my God, I got 8 hours to have to myself, right? I do get 8 hours of sleep or close to it, but I'm thinking, wow, 8 hours. So for me personally, that's kind of in the back of my brain. How do I find that time to, we're all like computers and laptops in a way. We need to recharge. We need to reboot. And if you don't go through that process, you are going to hit burnout. You are not going to make the right decisions. You're not going to be able to show up for yourself and show up for your team. So that's something I'm personally working on and trying to get our team to work on too. Don't know if I'll ever get to that perfect 8, 8, and 8, but if I can work towards a little bit of that, that's what I aspire to.
There's so many ways to answer the question because it's so individualized, isn't it? I mean, even that 8, 8, and 8, right? So one person's you time might be like training for a marathon. That's not very relaxing, but it might recharge them. So some practical advice. I just taught a little class on time management and went through you look at your day and you have a high energy part of your day, a mid, kind of, and a low, right? So my son wakes up with no energy, but about 2 o'clock he wakes up, and then that's his high energy part of the day. I'm a morning person. And then you've got work you need to put a lot of energy into, right? That it exhausts you to do that work, whatever it is. And then there's that work that maybe comes a little bit easier. And looking at your day as when you have high energy and maybe tackling that work that's harder to do and arranging the work to your energy levels, it does help a lot from a time management perspective because you'll see yourself moving through the work that really I think is could cause the burnout. So that's one practical thing you could do.
For me, when I know that we live in a digital world right now, but I like to use analog products. And I have a huge whiteboard right in front of my desk, and I stare at it every single day. And then I write on there what the 25-yard target is, what the 50-yard target is, and what the 100-yard target is. And obviously, I prioritize because, if we've got an upcoming class, and all those things will shift from 100 to 50 to 25 there periodically, But that helps me to kind of, figure out where I exhaust a lot of my energy, into. Obviously, if there's something that's downrange a little bit, or a couple of months out and we're just now starting to tackle it, I'll put it over here and then I'll exert a little bit of energy, towards it and then more also too. And then me too, I live by my calendar. So in order for me to do those, I actually physically on my Outlook calendar will put those tasks on there to accomplish and associate it with a time there, and then all I do is just focus, my entire time just to work on that specific task that I, intently put on my calendar, to do.
The work-life balance, I was told once that I only have one life. So getting out of my head this idea that I have my work life and my personal life, and I'm trying to keep it all in balance and everything equal, that I have one life. So some days, what my kids need takes over everything that I thought I was going to get done. And some days, something comes up at work, but I try to live by my calendar and schedule out what work things I hope to achieve in a given day or throughout the week, knowing that something might come up and throw it, and then I just kind of rearrange my task list. And the other side of that is how you frame things in your brain. So you feel like, I have to do this, and I have to do this, and I have to do that, and I don't know how I'm going to get it all done. And framing that the way you talk to yourself is, I get to do this. So I get to have this meeting with my leadership team, and I get to have this call with this vendor, and I get to go to my kids' school and pick them up and drive them here. And that when you change just the way you even talk about your day-to-day tasks inside your head, helps you feel more motivated to get it done.
This one's really short and sweet, but what fuels your drive to continue to improve yourself?
My degree is in continuous improvement, so I don't actually believe you can ever sort of arrive and be great at anything. Whatever, I say it to our team all the time, like we're not gonna all of a sudden arrive and say like, okay, cool, now we don't have to do anything else. That we're constantly working to improve ourselves.
That's a tough one. Just continuous improvement. There was, I go back to resort some of my sayings in the military, every single day is an opportunity to fix and to continue to do maintenance in our foxhole, to be ready each and every day. So to me, it's always so we accomplish this, what's the next thing that we need to be able to accomplish, and to continue to be better.
I was very blessed to have a mother who sat me down as a young girl and said, never ever apologize for investing in yourself. Put yourself first, because if you do that, then you can take care of everyone around you. And, that was just what my mom said to me. I didn't think anything much about it at the time other than I was going to do it. And I feel like I had this great person in my life telling me these things to make me feel good about taking time for myself and being confident and not thinking about that as me being selfish. And now I look back and I think, what a great leader, someone who never finished, really school, but just knew kind of how to navigate life. So I say to that question that it's good. Take time, invest. You're here right now doing this. You've already been investing in yourself just because you want to learn more. And that's fantastic. Keep doing that.
I think for myself, it's really reflecting and understanding that I'm continuing to evolve. And who I was 20 years ago is different than who I was 10 years ago, who I am today. It's going to be different who I am 10 years from now, right? And then just continuing trying to focus on how can I be the best version of myself, not only in, and I love that one life, right? Not only in my work life, but also in my personal life. And I think trying to be that best version, whatever that is of myself, is what I strive for every day.
Well, I think that's a great place to end,
Yeah.
right? That was very well said. Well, thank you guys all. I think, Jessica, you're coming up next. Thank you guys all for participating in this.
Thank you for joining us again.
Thank you guys for joining us. This was great.